The day I headed to Harbor City, Lily unexpectedly got engaged to someone else. Everyone assumed I'd rush back to Beijing that same night and stir things up at the engagement party, but they had no clue that I had no plans to return or make a scene. Nobody knew that before heading to Harbor City, I had already happily gotten engaged to someone else. From that moment on, you do your thing, and I'll handle mine. No need for us to think about meeting up anymore. The last time I confessed to Lily, I totally embarrassed myself. We were in a private room packed with people, but it was dead silent. Not a single soul spoke. Minutes ticked by, and finally, Ethan stood up to break the awkwardness. "Hey, you're Lily's brother. Isn't this kinda inappropriate?" A guy in the corner snickered. "What's inappropriate? Orphan with different parents." Laughter erupted, turning into a full-on chorus. I glanced at Lily, who was covering her mouth, laughing so hard she was shaking, and I gritted my teeth. I grabbed the guy who called me an orphan by his collar and punched him in the nose. The next second, Lily shouted, "Ethan, stop. Do you want to hear something even more hurtful?" She frowned, stood up, and looked at me, saying, "I've clearly rejected you many times before. Why do you keep pestering me?" I pushed the guy away, forced a smile, and asked, "Rejected me? So when I started dating someone, why did you throw a fit and cry?" She replied, "That's because you're my brother, Lou family's adopted son. If you randomly marry someone, it'll make things hard for my parents." I laughed and said, "What about that kiss on my 20th birthday?" Lily looked into my eyes with a hint of disdain. "Ethan, I was drunk that night. My mind was all over the place. You don't really think that kissing you means I like you, do you?" I pinched my brow and said quietly, "Lily, you've had 4 boyfriends behind my back, but each time I taught them a lesson and you broke up with them immediately. I pressed on, and then you acted all cute, saying you wouldn't do that again. Why?" She replied, "Because I hadn't met someone I truly liked." As she spoke, she nestled into Alex's arms, saying, "Ethan, listen carefully. This is the last time I'll say it. I like Alex, and I'm marrying him. Your previous tactics won't work this time." She added, "Alex?" looking smug as he affectionately gazed at her, without hesitation. She stood on her tiptoes and pressed her lips to his. Alex held the back of her head, responding more passionately. They kissed deeply, oblivious to everyone around them. At that moment, I remembered that kiss from my 20th birthday. It was just as intense and lingering, leading me to dream for 4 years without waking up, blindly believing that she liked me. Lily moved out of the Liu family's old house and started living with Alex. On the day she moved out, I was busy with my graduation defense at school. Choosing such a day was probably to prevent me from causing trouble for Alex. However, this time, I didn't feel the usual rage. After a brief moment of displeasure, I quickly shook it off and moved on. That evening, I had a graduation dinner with some close classmates. Even though I didn't go looking for him, he came looking for me. On my way to the restroom, I ran into Alex. He said to me, "Ethan, Lily is here too. Are you going to see her?" I shook my head. "I'm with my classmates, so I won't go." Suddenly, Alex leaned closer and said, "Ethan, I advise you not to meddle. If you speak ill of me in front of Lou's parents, I'll make sure you regret it." I pushed him away with a smile. "Mr. E, if you hadn't said anything, I wouldn't have thought of it. Since you've brought it up, if I don't speak ill of you, doesn't that mean you wasted your breath?" A flicker of fear crossed his eyes. I continued to mock him. "I heard your dad spent a few years in prison for extortion. Have you told Lily about that? I should remind Uncle and Auntie." In the next moment, Alex punched my left shoulder, but I didn't dodge. I quickly kicked his knee, and he let out a yelp of pain and knelt down. That was when I realized my left shoulder was throbbing. Upon closer inspection, I saw he had been holding a key that had dug into me. Rage surged within me. I wanted nothing more than to drag him into the restroom and teach him a lesson. But the next second, a sharp voice rang out. "Ethan, what are you doing?" Before I could react, a slap landed hard on my face. I turned to see Lily, expressionless. It was the first time she had ever laid a hand on me. Alex rubbed his knee and said, "Lily, don't get it twisted. Ethan might just be in a bad mood today." Lily glared at me, visibly upset. "You're still defending him. He's always bullying others. I've really had enough." Lily bent down to help Alex up and shot me a cold look. Her eyes filled with anger. "Ethan, apologize." I remained silent. She shot me another icy glance. "You jerk, apologize." Alex, assisted by her, subtly smirked at me, looking all too pleased with himself. My shoulder was bleeding, blood trickling down my arm in two glaring lines. But it seemed Lily didn't even notice. Her gaze suggested I was a terrible villain. I couldn't help but laugh self-deprecatingly. I spread my hands and asked, "Why should I apologize?" Lily looked momentarily taken aback but quickly bit her lip, saying, "Why don't you apologize for bullying him?" I replied shamelessly, "Why would I bully others if I didn't bully him?" Lily's face flushed with anger as she scolded, "You're truly shameless. If my parents knew you were this kind of person." I interrupted her, implying, "Your parents probably need to know." Alex looked at me and quickly tried to soothe Lily. "Let it go, Lily." "How can I let it go?" Lily instantly felt a surge of sympathy for him. She said, "Ethan, I've told you before. Alex is different from others. No matter how you bully him, I won't break up with him. It'll only make me love him more and hate you more." With that, she helped Alex turn and leave. I stood there, contemplating for a long while. The pain in my shoulder was sharp, but my heart felt oddly empty and light. I realized at that moment that all those so-called obsessions had turned to dust, completely vanished. They could do as they wished. It was none of my concern. That night, Alex posted 3 updates on his WeChat moments, all of which were screenshot and sent to me by some people in our circle with ulterior motives, especially Lily's reply, which was particularly highlighted. I knew they secretly wanted to see me humiliated. In the past, I might have let their interactions provoke me and sought out those thugs for a beating. Then she would immediately break up with them and come to me, saying she wouldn't act like that again, giving me the false impression that she actually cared about me. But this time, I ignored it. Instead, I dialed a number from 7 days ago. "Miss Zhao, this is Ethan. I've thought about what you mentioned the other day. When I was 7, my parents died unexpectedly. Uncle Lu, who had a good relationship with my dad, took me in. Aunt Xiao was my mother's best friend from her youth. However, later, she eloped with her lover, and my mother supported her with some money to start a business in Harbor City. But by the time she established herself there, my parents were already gone. Aunt Xiao wanted me to live in Harbor City, as the business my mother had partnered with her was still managed by her, and now it was ready to be handed back to me. On the other hand, she hinted at wanting to fulfill the promise she made with my mother when they were young, wanting me to fulfill the betrothal agreement made between me and her daughter. 7 days ago, I hadn't agreed, not wanting to offend her, only saying I would consider it. But tonight, I had let go of all those years of obsession. My foolish behavior as a lovesick simp felt ridiculous. I didn't want to be the laughingstock of the circle anymore. It was better to start fresh elsewhere. 6 months ago, Lily insisted I go to school in Harbor City, even having a tantrum with Uncle Lou over it. But I had never agreed. Now I felt it was a great opportunity. Perhaps it was fate's arrangement after all. On the other end of the line, Aunt Zhao was laughing joyfully, saying, "Ethan, your sister Anna is waiting for your approval. She can't wait to fly to Beijing to pick you up herself." I held the phone, feeling inexplicably shy. Even though I had promised to move to Harbor City, the next moment felt like my life was already being arranged for me. Yet it didn't seem so bad. The sounds of laughter in my ears made me feel dazed. After 15 years of living together and 7 years of liking someone, it turned out that letting go completely only took a mere 7 days. The day Lily and Alex got engaged was deliberately chosen to coincide with my arrival in Harbor City. As a result, not many people came to see me off. When I got off the plane, I opened my phone and was flooded with messages, many of which were about Lily and Alex's engagement. I chuckled and deleted those contacts, blocking them all. Before coming to Harbor City, I met with Anna. I didn't want any complications or to draw attention to ourselves. Anna agreed with my intentions. We exchanged rings and had a low-key engagement. Now my account held an additional 100 million in profit sharing. And on our middle fingers, we wore simple rings. As I gathered my thoughts and prepared to head to Anna's house, my phone suddenly rang. It was Lily's cousin, Domingo. "Ethan, my sister's engagement ceremony is about to start. Where are you?" I replied, "I just arrived in Harbor City." He urged, "You need to hurry back. You can still make it." I calmly asked, "What for?" Domingo hesitated before saying, "Ethan, are you really that thick-headed? If you don't come back to teach Alex a lesson, my sister will really be someone else's." I was speechless. I asked, "Why should I go back to confront him? Isn't this a happy occasion for your sister?" Domingo's voice rose in panic. "Ethan, are you out of your mind?" Just as I was about to hang up, Alex's voice came through the line. "Ethan, aren't you coming to my engagement ceremony with Lily? Lily considers you her brother, so that makes me your brother-in-law. I'd really like to have your blessing." It was a well-rehearsed duet, but it didn't mean much to me. I looked at Anna in the distance. She was leaning against the car, graceful and gentle. My heart felt completely at ease. I said, "All right then, I wish you both a long and happy life together." Lily wore a beautiful silk satin gown. Her hair was styled in a lovely braid, and her makeup was light. At that moment, she was enjoying matcha cake with a few close friends in the garden. However, every so often, she would glance over at Domingo and the others nearby. She knew they were likely informing Ethan of her whereabouts, just like countless times before. Whenever there was a male presence around her, those people would immediately tell Ethan, and then Ethan would come running to cause trouble, even to the point of getting into a fight. She despised Ethan's possessiveness and hated how men would fight over her, feeling as if they were objectifying her. But deep down, she understood that this very behavior allowed her to easily dismiss those men. This time, she figured Ethan would likely come looking for trouble as well. And that's why she had chosen the day I arrived in Harbor City for her engagement. Unfortunately, the auspicious time for the ceremony was set for 6 in the evening. Lily was feeling rather unhappy about that. After all, if Ethan caught wind of it, he would immediately fly back, possibly arriving just in time for the ceremony to start. One of her friends remarked, "Lily, what if Ethan comes back looking for you?" "Yeah, if you're engaged to someone else, I bet he'll be furious if he finds out." Another friend added, "But it seems he's been unusually quiet lately. You and Alex are all lovey-dovey, and he hasn't made a peep. If it were in the past, he would have stormed in already." Lily took a small forkful of cake but hesitated to eat it, her mind racing with her friend's last comments. Ethan had indeed been unusually quiet, almost too calm, but based on her understanding of him, he wasn't the type to just let things go. Since childhood, she had rejected him numerous times, yet he always persisted, never backing down. Now it seemed he had become much steadier. Suddenly, Lily had a thought. She smirked lightly and popped the tiny bite of cake into her mouth. "Just wait and see. He won't leave me that easily." One friend asked, "Lily, are you saying Ethan will come back to cause trouble?" Lily didn't respond, but felt a strong conviction inside her. Ethan had always been a lovesick fool. No matter how capricious she was, he would always convince himself to tolerate her. He couldn't bear the thought of Lily getting hurt, more than he cared about his own pride. Lily knew that Ethan was just retreating to advance. She was sure that by the time the engagement ceremony started, Ethan would show up. Looking at the time on her phone, she said, "You all need to tell security to keep a close watch. Don't let any weird people in to cause trouble." Just as she finished speaking, she saw Domingo striding in confidently. "Cousin, it's Ethan. He's here. The car is outside." Lily felt a sudden surge of excitement, but quickly kept a cold expression. "I think he's just stubborn and won't let me go," Domingo replied. "Sister, what are you going to do? If he causes a scene, it'll be embarrassing for the Liu family." Lily scoffed and stood up, gracefully lifting her skirt as she walked outside. "I'll go see what he intends to do." The group of friends followed Lily outside, but as soon as they left the garden, Alex called out to her. "Lily!" Alex was dressed in a well-tailored deep blue suit with a simple silver-gray tie. The engagement ceremony was at 6 o'clock, still a few hours away. Alex felt anxious inside, but he didn't show it. He asked, "Why did you come out?" Lily paused, her gaze falling on Alex. He was gentle and refined, the kind of warm guy that girls easily fall for, quite the contrast to Ethan's brashness. Because of his humble background, Alex was somewhat timid, always speaking softly. During the time she was with Alex, she was quite fed up with Ethan and easily developed feelings for him. Moreover, her connection with Alex began with a classic hero saving the damsel scenario. Many women harbor romantic fantasies of being saved by a hero, so her feelings for Alex were quite different from the frivolities she experienced with her previous boyfriends. Alex said tenderly, "I heard Ethan is back. I just thought you might not want to continue with the engagement today." "I can understand that." He smiled lightly, his gaze sincere as he looked into Lily's eyes. In relationships, many men struggle with expressing their feelings and emotions. Their delicate words often trigger resistance, and they sometimes forget what they intended to say, halting in awkwardness. But there are also men who, though not eloquent, convey their feelings through a look or a gesture, expressing deep emotion without needing to say the words. At that moment, Alex's eyes clearly had that effect. Lily replied, "How could that be?" She shook her head vigorously and nestled into Alex's embrace, saying, "Alex, don't worry, I'll never leave him." Alex nodded, holding Lily's shoulders and gently patting her. "Lily, I'm okay. Whatever choice you make, as long as it's what you truly want, I'll be happy for you." Although his eyes were slightly red, revealing his reluctance, his words comforted Lily. She playfully rubbed against his chest, wishing she could stay in Alex's warm embrace forever. Domingo, with a gleeful smile, chimed in. "How could that be? Chung, my sister doesn't like Ethan at all. He's arrogant and aggressive. My sister is sick of him. How could she possibly want to go back to him?" Domingo also held a strong dislike for Ethan. His reasons were rooted in personal logic. He always saw himself as the sole heir of the Liu family, despite his uncle and aunt running the Liu group and Lily being their only daughter. Deep down, he fantasized that if Ethan hadn't been adopted, he, as the only male descendant, would eventually inherit the family business. This fantasy floated lightly in his mind, lacking substance, but not quite shameless. Perhaps if he reflected on it, he could differentiate between illusion and reality. Yet, this deep-rooted fantasy intensified his emotions, making him irrationally resentful towards Ethan. Over the years, he took great pleasure in seeing Ethan humiliated. Now that Ethan had been sent to Harbor City, hardly anyone had come to see him off. In fact, his belongings had been packed and sent ahead 2 weeks prior, as if the family was eager to get rid of him. Domingo felt quite satisfied at the moment. As long as it wasn't Ethan, he would support whoever became his brother-in-law. Lily suddenly looked at Domingo with confusion. "Aren't you usually on good terms with Ethan?" Domingo sneered. "How could I be on good terms with him? I despise Ethan more than anyone." Now that the dust had settled, he felt no need to pretend. He had once feigned brotherhood with Ethan, but now that he didn't have to, he felt refreshingly free. Thus, he didn't notice the unusual expression on Lily's face. Still talking to himself, he said, "Sister, why don't you stay with your fiancé? I'll go deal with Ethan. Don't worry, I'll make sure he gets humiliated." Lily asked, "What do you want to do?" He replied, "I'll find some bodyguards to beat him up and throw him out the door. If he dares to crash someone else's engagement, his parents have no face to show." Lily suddenly raised her hand. The sharp sound of a slap echoed, leaving everyone stunned, especially Alex. He furrowed his brows, sensing trouble. He saw Lily's eyes welling up with tears. Domingo glared, shouting, "Sister, what does this mean?" Lily said calmly, "Ethan is still my nominal brother. You call him brother, but secretly think of humiliating him. You really disgust me, Domingo." Gritting his teeth, Domingo retorted, "What do you mean I disgust you? What are you acting for? You clearly hate him the most. Everyone can see through your thoughts. Why are you suddenly playing the saint? Lily stood there, silent for a long time. Did she really hate Ethan as much as they said? Yet, when Ethan first came to the Liu family, they had the best relationship. She would obediently follow her brother, sharing her favorite candies with him. She would cling to him for stories, telling everyone he was her favorite. When she fell and got hurt, it was Ethan who comforted her and carried her home. When she was bullied at school, Ethan was the first to rush to her aid. Even the first time she got her period, it was he who bought her sanitary pads. Ethan had always cared for her, and she used to depend on him so much. She had liked being close to Ethan from the very beginning. When did that change? Lily felt a sudden confusion within. Alex's sigh snapped her back to reality. That's right. It must have been Ethan who changed first. He became more arrogant as he grew up. Coddled by the Liu family, with an increasingly overbearing nature, he had strong possessiveness and dominance, forbidding her from dating other men and often flying into a rage. That's why she grew to hate him more and more, distancing herself from him. It had to be that way. So she wanted the Liu family to send him away, to put him as far from her as possible, to Harbor City. She only wanted Ethan to respect her and understand her need for freedom. Once he realized that, she would naturally seek him out. With so many years of connection between them, how could she really bear to be so far apart? But now it seemed that Ethan was still stubborn. On such a joyous day, he continued to ruin her happiness. He was truly despicable. As soon as he arrived, he turned the Liu family into chaos, causing discord between the siblings. It was easy to understand this mentality. It was far easier to blame others than to admit one's own mistakes. Instead of reflecting on his actions, it was safer for him to stick to his established path. Lily had clearly given Ethan hints more than once, even sabotaging his relationships. But at this moment, she was blaming him for not allowing her to date others, completely forgetting her own actions. She had slapped her own brother, yet blamed Ethan for the turmoil in the Liu family by ignoring and forgetting her own detrimental behaviors. She created a causal chain that made her feel utterly justified, as if she were always on the right path. Lily thought she had figured it all out, yet tears flowed uncontrollably. She felt a sense of unease, but instinctively blamed Ethan, tightly clutching Alex as she choked out, "I'm sorry, Alex. I've been blaming Ethan on such a good day. I have to make it clear to him. I won't let him ruin our engagement." Alex wiped Lily's tears and let go, standing quietly as he watched her retreating figure. He was troubled. Domingo's earlier questioning made a lot of sense. Everyone knew that Lily hated Ethan the most, but because of just a few of Domingo's words, she had slapped her own cousin. Did she really hate Ethan? Or perhaps, deep down, she saw Ethan as different from anyone else. When Lily reached the entrance, she did not see Ethan. However, his Honda Accord was parked quietly nearby. Standing next to the car was his best friend, David. Lily's steps halted abruptly, her heart feeling as if it had dropped. At that moment, she remembered that Ethan had given this car to David before leaving Beijing. As David approached her, he held out a red envelope. His expression was neutral as he straightforwardly said, "Ethan asked me to give you and Alex this red envelope." Lily didn't reach out to take it. David frowned. "There's also something else." "What is it?" Lily asked. "Ethan left in a hurry and hasn't had the chance to see you. He called you a few times, but you didn't answer, so he hasn't been able to get it back from you. Remember that antique jade bracelet he gave you for your birthday? That was a token from his father to his mother." David smirked slightly, saying, "Ethan said this bracelet is meant for his future wife. Now that it's with you, it feels quite inappropriate. Miss Liu, could you give me the bracelet? I'll bring it to Ethan when I visit him in Harbor City." Lily suddenly looked down, her gaze falling on the jade bracelet on her wrist. That morning, she had inexplicably chosen to wear it while getting ready, even though it didn't quite match her dress, but she hadn't changed it. Now, looking at the bracelet, it felt glaring, meant for a future wife. The thought of Ethan possibly marrying another girl, someone who would share a bed with him, stirred discomfort in her heart. Ethan liked her so much. How could he marry someone else? Now, instead of coming himself, he sent David to demand a bracelet. It was nothing but a ploy to manipulate her. How infuriating. Indeed, Lily was disturbed by his actions. Seeing that she hadn't replied for a while, David called out, "Miss Lou?" Lily lifted her head and said dismissively, "You tell Ethan there's no way to take back a gift once it's given. Of course, if he insists, then let him come and ask me himself." After saying this, Lily turned to leave. David stopped her, gritting his teeth. "Miss Lou, wait a moment. I'll have Ethan speak to you personally." He thought to himself, what a joke. Ethan is getting married. How could such a meaningful jade bracelet stay with another woman? Ethan had repeatedly emphasized the importance of retrieving it before his wedding. He wanted to personally put it on his wife's wrist that day. David had long found Lily insufferable. But Ethan was blind and foolish, getting strung along for so long and then tossed aside. Just thinking about it made David want to punch Lily. But now he had finally come to terms with it. Ethan had found such a great wife. He was genuinely happy for his friend and was determined to fulfill his mission. When I received David's call, the car was almost at Sophia's house. I asked, "David, what's up?" He replied, "Ethan, I went to get the bracelet from Lily like you said, but she won't give it to me. She said if you really want it, you should talk to her yourself." I instinctively glanced at Sophia beside me, feeling inexplicably guilty. I wasn't very familiar with her yet, even though her makeup looked sweet and bright, instantly likable with peach blush and dewy light pink lip gloss. Her clear, bright eyes and composed demeanor gave off a certain distance. Even sitting in the car, she maintained a graceful posture, and her occasional smile radiated poise. That natural air of a rich girl made me feel a bit uneasy. Before I could speak to David, Lily's voice came through on the line. "Ethan, do you want the bracelet, or are you just trying to make me look bad?" I was momentarily stunned and let out a laugh in frustration. She continued, "If you're trying to disrupt my engagement with Alex, then I suggest you don't waste your effort. If you want the bracelet back, then you should take it back just like you gave it to me. After all, something so valuable, I won't just hand it back through someone else." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my tone calm. "David is my best friend. You can just give it to him. I'll bear all the consequences myself." Lily sneered. "Ethan, how much clearer can I be? You should take it back the same way you gave it to me." Then she hung up. I felt a surge of anger. How did I give her that bracelet? It was on my 20th birthday. Lily and I were both drunk. She secretly pulled me into her room, saying she had a gift for me. The next moment, she kissed me. I pushed her against the door and deepened the kiss. In the end, she patted my shoulder, and I finally restrained myself. Before leaving, I asked her to wait, went back to get the bracelet, and put it on her wrist. I told her its significance. She said nothing but shyly accepted it. Because of that, I thought she had tacitly accepted my feelings. These past few years felt like a terrible dream. Now that I was awake, I just wanted to completely sever ties with the past. I thought Lily would be eager to return it, like throwing away trash, but I never expected her to say that. It was then that I realized. Youthful folly must one day come with a price. If that bracelet hadn't held such meaning, I wouldn't have cared about getting it back. But now that I was getting married, leaving the bracelet with Lily would be unfair to Sophia. "What happened?" Sophia's gentle voice suddenly broke in. I instinctively looked up, our eyes meeting. I didn't want to hide anything, but because we were still getting to know each other, I found it hard to speak. I ultimately shook my head and said, "Nothing." I calculated that at worst, I could ask Uncle Lou for help. If that didn't work, I wouldn't mind taking some firm measures. I just had to get it back. With that determination, I gradually relaxed. "Really, nothing. Just a small matter with Uncle Lou's family?" I put on a lighthearted expression and smiled at Sophia. "I'll handle it." Sophia didn't press further. She just nodded lightly and said, Ethan, I trust you, but I'm your future wife, so if you encounter difficulties, you must tell me." I'll share the burden with you. Hearing future wife made my neck heat up. I was already engaged. In half a month, Sophia would be my wife. Bittersweet feelings swirled inside me, but amidst it all, I felt a glimmer of hope. I smiled at her and gently nodded. The car arrived at Sophia's house. I got out first and then turned to help her. I noticed the engagement ring on her finger. Since she put it on that day, she hadn't taken it off. As I helped her out of the car, she didn't let go of my hand. Instead, she squeezed it tightly. At first, I felt a bit awkward, but her soft, warm hand suddenly brought me immense calm. It felt like this was how it should be. From a distance, Aunt Zhao saw us holding hands and smiled appreciatively. Before we could get close, Aunt Zhao quickly came over and hugged me, tears welling in her eyes. "Ethan, seeing you reminds me of your mother. It's been so long since I saw her." I felt a surge of emotions. It was a distant memory, but her scent overlapped with the faint recollection of my mother. Sophia stood beside us, quickly teasing, "Auntie, you're making Ethan feel smothered." Aunt Zhao had married Sophia's father at 40. She never had children of her own, but treated these non-blood-related kids as her own. Sophia had always respected her. I had long known this. So I had never understood why Sophia agreed to this verbal marriage agreement. After all, it had nothing to do with her. But Aunt Zhao assured me that one day I would understand, so I didn't ask further. Aunt Zhao smiled, released me, and wiped her tears. "Ethan, come home with me." I instinctively looked at Sophia. She was watching me too. Behind us, the greenery was lush and vibrant. When I looked over, Sophia's eyes sparkled with warmth. She reached out her hand to me. "Ethan, let's go home." With 20 minutes to go until 6 o'clock, Alex had finished his pre-ceremony preparations, but Lily had yet to come out of the makeup room upstairs. After a moment of hesitation, Alex walked over. The makeup room door was unlocked. Faint voices drifted out. A woman's voice said, "Lily, is Ethan really not coming back?" Another replied, "If he was going to, he would have by now. Even a rocket couldn't get him here on time." The first voice continued, "Lily, I've actually been wanting to ask you for a long time. Do you really have no feelings for Ethan at all? You grew up together. He's always taken care of and protected you. He's always had eyes only for you." Alex paused, instinctively furrowing his brow. There was a long silence before Lily's voice finally spoke up. "I have no feelings. Would you have feelings for a simp?" Lily scoffed in feigned contempt, but she remembered Ethan was only a few months older than her, always treating her like an older brother, caring for and protecting her, making sure she never got bullied during her school years. She recalled the night of Ethan's birthday when she had kissed him, believing it must have been the alcohol that made her dizzy. She had also accepted the bracelet he gave her. The first voice chimed in again. "Such a handsome simp. I definitely have feelings for that." Another voice echoed, "Yeah, several of my friends have their eyes on him. Remember last year's horse racing event?" The first voice replied, "Of course. He wore a black rider's jacket and won the championship. I still remember how he stood on the podium, took off his hat, and smiled confidently. It was so charming." Lily remembered that day when Ethan, during his speech, said he wanted to dedicate his victory to a special someone in his heart. He had been so happy, showering her with attention, boasting about his medal and pony. He talked so much that when Lily ignored him, he teased her about the beautiful lady presenting the awards. At that moment, Lily had glared at him, and only when he said that he had eyes only for her, that Sophia had just caught a glimpse, did she feel relieved. A smile finally tugging at her lips. Both she and Ethan loved horseback riding. Ethan's pony was still being raised at Lou's family ranch. The next moment, Alex suddenly pushed the door open, interrupting Lily's thoughts. "Lily," he said, wearing a deep blue single-breasted suit, a replica of Lou's original engagement suit. Lou had come from humble beginnings, and the story of him rescuing a beauty to spark a beautiful romance was still fondly recalled by many today. Lily's greatest pride in life was her parents' deep love for each other. Perhaps that was why, when Alex had saved her, she developed special feelings for him. Now, standing before her, Alex resembled her father in those old photos, gentle and steady. Lily's heart was once again enveloped by that sense of fate. Many believed in destiny, either as a mere coincidence or as prophesied by the stars. That feeling was so strong that even if emotions were lacking, it could be filled with the thrill brought by destiny. So even though she had never considered taking the step of engagement and marriage with Alex today, she suddenly felt it was right to complete this engagement ceremony with him. Alex smiled at her and reached out his hand. Lily stood up, lifting her skirt to walk over to him. "I was worried because you didn't come downstairs for so long," Alex said. "Lily," she replied, "it's fine now, let's go." Alex asked, "Is everything okay with Ethan?" Lily's gaze flickered to the bracelet on her wrist. "Ethan is arrogant and self-righteous. He should just stay in Hong Kong forever. I never want to see him again." Alex felt a sudden thrill of joy inside him, but he maintained a worried expression. "Isn't that a bit harsh? After all, he's—" Lily interrupted. "It doesn't matter who he is. I just don't want to see him again." Lily gently linked her arm with Alex's. Alex said nothing more and led Lily downstairs. It was 6 o'clock. His engagement ceremony was about to begin. From this day forward, Alex would no longer live a life of poverty. He would no longer have to live in a mixed neighborhood or share a small room with his two younger brothers. His family would rise with him. Lily was the only opportunity fate had bestowed upon him to transcend social classes. He would hold on to her tightly and never let her go. Anna and I set our wedding date for half a month later. Time was tight, yet Anna's family had already been preparing for our wedding many years ago. So even though we were busy, things were progressing smoothly. Aunt Zhao told me that Anna had fallen seriously ill when she was young. After she recovered, her father took her to worship a Buddha, saying she must marry in September of her 25th year to ensure a long and healthy life. Anna's family took these beliefs seriously. When Aunt Zhao first mentioned this marriage over the phone, she calculated my birth date. It turned out that Anna and I were a perfect match in terms of destiny. So when I agreed to the engagement, the entire family was overjoyed. I received many precious gifts. The most meaningful one was an antique brooch left by Anna's mother. When Anna handed it to me, I felt guilty. The most appropriate return gift would be the pair of bracelets my father had given Anna's mother, but they were still with Lily. Perhaps seeing my gloomy mood, Anna took me to the garden for a walk. "Ethan, are you unhappy?" she asked. Her eyes filled with concern. My gaze fell on the shiny blue brooch on my chest. Even if I had no knowledge of antiques, I knew it was invaluable. Since childhood, I couldn't stand it when others treated me well. For every bit of kindness shown to me, I felt I had to repay it tenfold. 100-fold. I mentally calculated the gifts I could give to Anna, but every option felt insufficient. I was already feeling guilty, and encountering Anna's gentle gaze ignited a surge of anger within me. Years of obliviousness had turned me into a complete fool. I suddenly laughed, yet tears pricked my eyes amidst the laughter. Anna looked at me, panicked. She hurriedly pulled out a handkerchief from her pocket to wipe the moisture from my eyes. I waved my hand, casually wiping my eyes and replying, "It's not that I'm unhappy. It's just that I suddenly realized how foolish the past was." She paused for a moment and seriously replied, "No, Ethan. No matter what you've been through or what others say about you, I think you're amazing. As long as you take things seriously, you'll succeed in anything." Her sincere praise nearly made me lose myself. I laughed and said, "Anna, you're making me feel embarrassed. Who can withstand such flattery?" She suddenly blushed and whispered, "I've only ever praised you." I asked, "Haven't you ever had a boyfriend?" She answered, "Does kindergarten count?" I was taken aback and asked, "Haven't you dated anyone after growing up?" She looked down and shook her head in silence. I pressed on, "Have you ever liked someone?" Anna hesitated for a few seconds before finally saying, "Yes, but unfortunately, he didn't like me back." A faint understanding began to dawn on me, so that was it. Perhaps Miss Anna had a crush on someone who loved someone else, which led her to agree to this engagement in despair. For some reason, an uncomfortable feeling surged in my heart, but I quickly comforted myself. Maybe it was better this way. At least I wouldn't feel too guilty. When I left that day, Anna had said to me, "Ethan, I hope you can see me as your future wife from the heart. I know you tend to keep many things to yourself, but if you could occasionally share or talk to me about some of them, it would make me very happy." I felt that my heart had indeed begun to open up slightly. I nodded and said, "Anna, I will." I gave Anna a pink diamond ring as a gift. It wasn't particularly expensive, but it was a design I had sketched myself on a whim. This gift felt pure, as I hadn't designed it for Lily. I had simply been thinking of my parents, translating my longing into every line of the pencil strokes. The wedding preparations were in full swing, but we had not announced it publicly. I didn't want to be ostentatious, especially since my affairs with Lily were still unresolved. When I left, Lily had probably already decided never to see me again. So all my belongings were packed and sent to Harbor City. This included all the little gifts she had given me over the years, like the box of paper cranes she folded for me as a child, the candy wrappers from the chocolates she gave me on Valentine's Day in high school, and the ties she gifted me on my first day at work. Among these, there was one special gift, a set of rings she secretly bought during college. They weren't valuable, but I cherished them like treasures, because a gift like a ring carries an extra layer of meaning for a girl. Seeing it made me tolerate all her bad moods. But now I had slowly come to understand that when someone never liked you, even if you have a marriage certificate, it's as if it doesn't exist at all, let alone these material things. As I sorted through Lily's gifts one by one, my heart felt strangely calm without a ripple of emotion. By the end, the box was empty, and my heart felt lighter than ever before. As I was preparing to send the package, my phone suddenly buzzed with several WeChat messages. It was from the staff at the horse ranch. My little horse was sick, refusing to eat grass and hay. Seeing the photo, I was frantic. The staff said the little horse must miss me, since I usually visited every few days, but this time, I hadn't gone on schedule. I hurriedly called to inquire. On the other end, they said, "Mr. Ethan, Miss Lou is also here. Let her talk to you." I was taken aback, and Lily's voice came through clearly. "Ethan, didn't you forget your promise when we raised this little horse? How can you be so irresponsible?" Of course I hadn't forgotten. The children in the Lou family all have their own pets, but the only requirement is that you must take full responsibility for the pet you choose and care for it well. You must never abandon it halfway, I said. "Isn't it you who asked Uncle Lou to arrange my trip to Harbor City?" Lily replied. "Ethan, why do you always make excuses? If you really cared about the little horse, you wouldn't have left it. You would refuse your dad's arrangements and not go to Harbor City. In short, you don't really care about your little horse." At that moment, Lily's heart skipped a beat. It seemed she suddenly heard her own underlying message. Ethan, he actually didn't care much about me either. Otherwise, he wouldn't have really gone to Harbor City. He wouldn't be indifferent upon learning of her engagement. He wouldn't have missed the engagement ceremony. He wouldn't be taking back the jade bracelet he gifted me. "Ethan, I'm not in the mood to scold you, so I advise you not to stir up trouble. I'll make time to go back and see it, if possible. I also plan to bring it to Harbor City." Lily's voice trembled, tinged with frustration. "Are you planning to never return to Beijing?" I just smiled and said, "Why not? Yes, I was going to rebuild my family in Harbor City, so my focus on life and work would naturally shift here." But there was no need to tell Lily any of this. Lily coldly said, "Ethan, you always have to be so clever with your words. How immature can you be? You better not regret it." "Ethan," I was speechless and asked, "Regret what?" She replied, "I'm engaged to Alex now." I asked, "What of it?" She said, "The wedding date is being finalized." I responded, "And then," She said, "Ethan, don't tell me you don't understand. If I really marry Alex, you—" I laughed, feeling relieved and pleased, and said, "Sis, it's a good thing for you to get married. Do you want me to give you a big red envelope?" On the other end of the line, Lily suddenly fell silent, and I didn't wait for her to say anything else. I just hung up. When we were 16, we had our first crush, and from then on, things spiraled out of control. She wouldn't let me call her sister, and she refused to call me brother. Now, after all these years, we had finally returned to the most appropriate position. I had no interest in hating her or blaming her after so many years of companionship. Giving a red envelope was only right. I called Uncle Lou after greeting him and Aunt Lou. I delicately brought up the matter of the bracelet. "Uncle Lou, I was young and foolish a couple of years ago, causing quite a few misunderstandings. Now that I think about it, I always feel regret and shame. Since my sister is engaged now, I think it's best not to cause any unnecessary misunderstandings." Uncle Lou sighed on the phone. He said, "Ethan, I've always liked you and regarded you as my own son. I've actually always wanted you to be our family's son-in-law. Your aunt has been shedding tears talking about you these past few days." I understood their sadness. I felt difficult too. But that sadness was only because of the sincere love from the two elders. So I said, "Uncle, feelings cannot be forced. You can't make a sweet melon grow from a bitter vine." He said, "Ethan, Lily is too willful. She just—" I interrupted, "It's nothing, Uncle. If my sister likes someone, she should marry whoever she wants." He paused for a moment and said, "I will help you get that bracelet back. In a few days, your aunt and I will go to Harbor City for a wedding. I'll personally give you the bracelet then." I thanked him and hung up the phone. The staff handling the shipping had also arrived. The carefully packed gift box was loaded onto the truck. In a few days, it would be safely delivered to Lily soon. Uncle Lou and the others would come to Harbor City. When the jade bracelet was returned to me, the absurdity of those youthful days would come to a complete end. From then on, Lily and I would have nothing to do with each other. After Lily got engaged, she started meeting up with her friends more frequently. When she went to the bathroom, she overheard David talking on the phone. David said, "Bro, I'm heading to Harbor City tomorrow. We agreed you'd have your wife introduce me to a bridesmaid." "What? Your wife found 7 bridesmaids? Ethan? Oh, Ethan, fate has been cruel for too long. If you don't mind, I'd be willing to call you father." Lily stood in the long, empty hallway, David's excited voice still echoing in her ears. But in the end, only that name, Ethan, remained. She thought she might be drunk. Otherwise, how could she hear such absurd jokes? Yes, she was really drunk. That was why she was hearing things. Or perhaps she just missed Ethan, and that was why she misheard someone else's name as Ethan's. Lily leaned against the wall, staggering over. She called out, "David!" David, who had just finished his call, was startled and asked, "Lily!" Lily demanded, "Who were you just talking to?" She stared into David's eyes and said, "I heard you say you were going to Harbor City for a wedding, and I heard Ethan's name." Her usually stunning face now revealed a hint of distortion, and those eyes that usually sparkled were now filled with unshed tears. She forced a smile, but it was cold and desperate. She said, "Don't tell me you're going to attend Ethan's wedding." At first, David didn't understand, but the next moment he realized, what a twist of fate. Over the years, David had been so anxious because of Ethan. Now he felt so pleased inside. The proud daughter of the Lou family was experiencing this today. Wasn't she the one who loved to keep others dangling? Wasn't she the one who enjoyed watching those who liked her suffer? She would have countless opportunities to feel that way in the future. But David wouldn't tell her the truth. Ethan had forbidden him to speak. So he wouldn't. He wouldn't let Lily know, running to Harbor City to stir trouble. That was his best friend's most important day of his life. He absolutely couldn't let that scheming girl ruin it. He sneered and said, "You misheard. I'm indeed going to Harbor City for a wedding. I'm going with Ethan because it's one of our former classmates getting married." Lily seemed to not believe him and said, I've never heard Ethan has any close classmates in Harbor City. David smirked and said, Lily, do you really know Ethan? You only enjoy the process of being adored, so his identity, life, and thoughts are irrelevant. So what nonsense are you spouting now? Ethan is my buddy, one of the people I admire most in my life. I'll tell you, I'm cheering for your breakup with him. You're not worthy of his affection for so many years. After David said that, he turned and left, and Lily watched his disappearing figure, her heart suddenly pained. But she didn't know why she felt this way. She just felt a sudden, overwhelming urge to see Ethan, even if it was just for a moment. But the next day, Lily received a large box of express delivery from Harbor City. The reason it arrived so quickly was that Sophia had specially arranged for a private jet to deliver it to Beijing. At that time, I was completely focused on arranging the wedding venue and had no idea about any of this. As Lily opened those boxes, her body inexplicably trembled. The things inside felt unfamiliar at first, but gradually, a flood of memories surged forth like a tidal wave. The first couple of bracelets she gave Ethan, he didn't like the style, thought it was too childish, but still wore it dutifully. The little stars she gave him, the stickers she gave him, and colorful little gems filled an entire box. At the end, there was the set of matching rings. Lily held that small box tightly. Suddenly, her vision blurred. A voice rang in her ears saying, Lily, you're practically Ethan's shadow now. When do you plan to marry him? Back then, the kids often teased her and Ethan like that. At 20, she was young, playful, and headstrong, with so many boys chasing her. But she dismissed them all because with handsome and cheerful Ethan by her side, she linked arms with him, making countless friends envious. She was happy because this wonderful Ethan liked only her. At that time, she wanted to marry him. To be exact, she had known for a long time that she would marry him someday, so she gave him that small token, that cheap set of rings. But when did she start to tire of Ethan? And when did fate defeat her childhood companion? Was it that she truly felt nothing for him? Or was it simply because she was certain he would never leave her? Lily clutched the rings tightly. Suddenly, absurdly, tears fell. At that time, I was busy with the final rehearsal before the wedding. I naturally had no idea. Lily saw the gifts from the past decade, especially the reaction to the ring I treasured. And during the rehearsal, when I kissed Sophia for the first time, I also didn't know that Lily would slap Alex hard because of that ring. How ridiculous. That day when Alex mocked me, set me up, and forced me to strike him, none of us expected such a day would come. But Lily and Alex had already become unimportant people in my life. I didn't care at all. When Uncle Lou brought the jade bracelet to me, I also told my parents the good news about my upcoming wedding. They were both surprised because the wedding they came to Harbor City for was Anna's. They never expected that the mysteriously elusive groom, who had never been photographed by the media, would be me. They were happy for me, but also tearful with regret, especially Aunt Lou. She held my hand tightly, refusing to let go. She said, Ethan, I don't want to cry on your big day, but I'm really unwilling. It's my fault. I didn't raise my daughter well, so she took one wrong step after another. Lily wanted to break up with Alex, but Alex was adamant about not letting her go. Alex's entire family came to the Lou's home to cause a scene. They even threatened to stay and not leave. After all, they had nothing to lose, while the two of them were causing a ruckus. Lily just found out she was pregnant. Their marriage was probably going to be finalized. I gently hugged Aunt Lou back, feeling my eyes slightly wet, thinking back to when I first went to the Lou's. I cried every night looking for my parents, Aunt Lou comforting me. Scene after scene, I remembered those carefree days, the times they treated me like their own son. I hoarsely said, Uncle and Aunt, it's not your fault. In the end, she wiped away her tears and said, Child, it's Lily who isn't blessed. Aunt sees Sophia as a very good girl. You will definitely be happy together. I know that a woman is gentle, caring, and understanding as Sophia. Even if she doesn't love me, our married life would still be happy and harmonious. But I never expected that happiness would be far more intense than I imagined. When I placed the jade bracelet on Sophia's wrist, she showed me a photo. In the photo, I was holding a trophy, smiling confidently toward the audience. And Sophia was standing beside me, smiling at me that year at the horse racing festival when I won the championship. It was Sophia who presented the award and put the medal around my neck. But at that time, my heart and mind were entirely on Lily. I only glanced at her briefly. I only knew that she was an incredibly beautiful woman. Who would have thought there would be such fate afterward? I smiled like a child, pointing at the photo of us two. But I couldn't say a word. Sophia hugged me from behind and said, "Do you remember I told you I once had someone I liked?" She touched the jade bracelet, her cheek lightly brushing against my back as she said, "Ethan, I told myself, when I receive that bracelet, that's when I will tell you the person I love is you." In college, I particularly loved browsing Big Orange's tweets. There was a phrase often used to cover up scenes called crazy flipping the pan. At that time, I didn't quite understand what it meant until the wedding night. When the bride shed her daytime modesty, I turned into a chef. I cooked this dish with great energy, stir-frying and searing, a vigorous cooking session. I was tireless, eager to whip up a grand banquet. But the next day, I was exhausted, sleeping until noon, while I was still sound asleep. Sophia had already refreshed herself with a morning run, breakfast, swimming, bathing, and so on, days after the wedding. The housekeeper smiled and told me, "Sir, you have no idea how much Miss Sophia smiled that day. In all the years I've been at Sophia's home, it was the first time I saw her talk so much in the morning. She greeted everyone, even my little grandson. I think Miss was eager to carry around a loudspeaker to tell the whole world that she got married and loves her husband." I couldn't help but laugh, making an excuse to send the housekeeper away and sat alone in the garden reading the news from a distance. I saw Sophia's car driving in. She got out of the car immediately, looking for me. I shouted, "Sophia!" I waved at her with a smile from the garden. My little horse had been sent to Harbor City the day before, secretly arranged by Sophia. It had been well taken care of on the way, with no signs of discomfort. When I saw it, it was happily circling around Sophia. Seeing Sophia smile, I smiled too. I pushed through the lush greenery to walk toward her, and as I walked towards her, she had already run to my side. I stopped, opened my arms. As she leaped into my embrace, I held her tightly. In Epilogue Lily only learned about it on Ethan's wedding day. At first, she couldn't believe it at all. She even naively thought that the so-called wedding was just a play directed by Ethan himself, just like her engagement to Alex. It didn't hold any real significance. But when her friend sent her photos from Ethan's wedding and she saw Ethan in a tailored groom suit standing next to his bride, when she saw her parents sitting in the VIP seats, when she saw David flirting with the bridesmaids next to Ethan, when the handsome groom kissed his bride, when the bride shed tears of happiness, Lily suddenly heard a deafening crash as something inside her collapsed. She felt a bit dazed, and it seemed she couldn't hear what her friends were saying at all. All that echoed in her ears was that one sentence: "Ethan is married. Ethan is someone else's husband now." But didn't Ethan always like her since they were kids? Didn't Ethan always hope Lily would marry him? Wasn't he in love with her? On her 20th birthday, he personally put the most meaningful jade bracelet on her wrist. They had made a promise. And if Lily had no feelings for him at all, how could she have let Ethan chase away one male friend after another? To be fair, she had been using Ethan all along. Back then, she was a playful girl. As a wealthy young lady, she always had many suitors around her. She loved watching those men fight over her. She adored the classic Western novels and fantasized about being a noblewoman, watching her lover duel for her. But she also knew clearly that she was just playing and would never really date any of those men. Ethan said she had 4 boyfriends, but they all broke up after he had a talk with them. But he didn't know that she had never actually dated those boys. After a few flirty days, she had had enough of the game. But how could she, being so noble, play the villain? So her childhood friend became the best tool? She deliberately encouraged Ethan. Ethan had a fierce temper. The moment he heard that any man was no good and was bullying Lily, after Domingo or others fanned the flames, he would rush over to teach those foolish boys a lesson. And she, of course, would act heartbroken, forced to break up by her brother. But deep down, she secretly delighted in it. She seemed to particularly enjoy seeing Ethan angry for her. She liked watching him act as her most devoted knight, driving away the bothersome suitors. He was domineering yet somewhat sad, but Ethan would always forgive her. As long as she acted cute, said something sweet, accompanied him to do what he wanted, and gave him some affection, he would immediately cheer up. She thought this time would be the same. She thought no matter how big her mistake was, Ethan would forgive her. Ethan had lost his parents and had come to the Liu family since he was young. Where else could he go? Everyone assumed they would definitely get married in the future, even if Lily was too willful and got engaged to Alex. But now Ethan was marrying someone else. He had a wife, someone beside him. Lily could no longer stand by Ethan's side. On the day Ethan and his wife returned to the capital, Lily had just had a big fight with Alex. She had moved out of their shared apartment, determined to cut ties with Alex completely. When a friend sent her a video from the hotel corridor, she suddenly realized that her relationship with Alex had been calculated from the very beginning. The seemingly gentle and kind man was actually so despicable. She couldn't bear to recall the scenes from that day, couldn't bear to think about how disappointed Ethan must have felt. She wished she could go back to that day and strangle that pathetic version of herself. She had been with Ethan for 15 years. Why had she acted so crazily to humiliate him? It was from that moment that she completely lost Ethan. She had completely lost him. So now, when Ethan walked into the living room holding his wife's hand, she saw the antique jade bracelet on his wife's wrist at a glance. A sharp pain pierced her heart all at once, the kind of overwhelming pain that was inescapable. But she managed to maintain her composure, silently following her parents behind, watching his happiness. That day, Lily didn't say a single word. She didn't even dare to look at Ethan more than once. Her hands, resting on her knees, had clenched tightly, almost piercing her palm. Yet she seemed to feel no pain at all. She felt somewhat impressed with herself. How could she maintain a calm smile throughout? It wasn't until Ethan was about to leave that she realized her face was starting to freeze. When Ethan was leaving, he called out to her. He called her a sister, just like when he first came to their home. Lily heard it clearly and understood it well. Ethan truly had no feelings for her anymore. The last thing Ethan said to her that day was, "Sister, I hope you can find your own happiness in the future." She nodded. But inside, it was pouring rain. She couldn't do it, but she couldn't tell him. After breaking up with Alex, the entire Liu family was embroiled in a shameful scandal. Lily discovered she was pregnant, but she absolutely didn't want the child. Nor did she want to be with Alex again. She couldn't accept that her future husband would be the father of her child, especially since he had been plotting against her since the first meeting. The so-called heroic rescue, the replay of parental love, were all lies. Just lies. Alex was simply using her as a stepping stone to make a fortune. She didn't want this child, but Alex was blocking her. He even brought his parents over. Lily had never encountered such shameless, lowly people. They were relentless, throwing tantrums and using every trick in the book. The Liu family was a cultured family. Her parents couldn't afford to lose face like this. She couldn't even call the police. Overwhelmed, Uncle Liu and Aunt Liu could only pay them off to leave. But those people tasted blood and were even less willing to let go. They were like leeches, like vampires, like maggots, like a nightmare that would never end. Lily was exhausted by the chaos caused by Alex's family, and her belly was growing larger. She finally decided to tear off the shameful facade herself. When the police came to the Liu family and chased those ruffians away, Alex seemed to realize he had no chance left. But still, he extorted a large sum of money with his leverage. On the day of the confrontation, Lily felt like she was meeting Alex for the first time. He was cold, petty, greedy, twisted, and delightfully ugly. When Uncle Liu handed the money to Alex, Lily suddenly wanted to laugh at herself. She laughed at her foolishness, her naivety, everything she had once taken for granted as a girl. The daily companionship of youth faded away and lost its freshness. But a true woman would love a man who would do everything to protect her, to encourage and support his struggles. She was undoubtedly a complete disgrace. Later, Ethan's wife took his pony away. When Lily went to the stable, the pony had already been taken away. Only her horse was left. Standing all alone in the stable, Lily let it out. She mounted the horse and raced into the wind, going round and round, tireless. Until finally, she closed her eyes in the wind and loosened the reins. She didn't die, but she lost half her life. Her parents cried heartbreakingly by her bed. At that moment, Lily seemed to finally grow up. She endured the pain, comforting her parents, thinking to herself that her future life could not continue in such an absurd way. Shortly after, Alex returned and he was sentenced to prison for extortion. Also imprisoned were the father and half-brother who had caused the most trouble. The people from Sophia's family quickly dispersed like a tide. They had received some money before, although they weren't satisfied. It was better than nothing. Returning to their hometown with the money, they no longer cared about Alex's fate. Only Alex's stepmother was crying her eyes out over her son's imprisonment. Hating Alex, these old stories from afar in the capital faded like ink on an old scroll, and Ethan's new life gradually unfolded like a fresh canvas.